Today we're going to go over the definitive guide on setting up your very own hosted Bondix server. So let's get to it. So firstly, there is a blog article that will be in the description that you'll be able to follow, and that has all of the step-by-step instructions. I'm going to be going through the video quite quickly, so you'll be able to refer to the article in your own time when you're setting up your server. But also in there are links to our DigitalOcean and our Vultr affiliates. DigitalOcean will get you $200 credit against your first server, and Vultr will give you $100. So it's worth just clicking on those and getting yourself some money off. We're going to go through the entire process of setting up a virtual server, updating and securing that virtual server, installing Bondix server on there, and then securing that with an SSL certificate that will automatically renew. So first off, we'll head over to DigitalOcean, where we will be doing this demo. We've checked on Vultr. All the steps that we are going through here will work exactly the same on Vultr, so there shouldn't be a problem there. You'll need to head over to DigitalOcean or Vultr and create yourself an account. With DigitalOcean, once you're logged in, you'll see on your dashboard on the left-hand side a droplets option. If you click into that, and then there's a blue Create Droplet button. If you click on there, that will take you to the Create Droplet screen. First off, you'll need to select your region. So for us, we're going to select London. When we go down, we then need to choose the image that we're going to put onto the server. So we're going for Ubuntu. We're not going to go for the latest version, the 2310. We're going to go for the 2204 long-term support. This is tried and tested with Bondix. We've done countless installations of this, and we find that we have no issues with it whatsoever, so we're quite happy saying to use that. So the next thing you need to do is choose your server size. Now, this is important. Depending on the number of tunnels that you're going to have, you'll need to size your server correctly. There is a link in the blog article that will take you over to the Bondix wiki page, which will show you how to size your server correctly for the number of tunnels. If you're just going to have one tunnel, then what we're going to set up here is going to be absolutely fine. So we're going to go for a basic shared CPU, regular disk type, and we're just going to go for the $6 a month. So that gives you 1 gig, 1 CPU, 25 gig disk, and a terabyte worth of data transfer a month. That's going to be plenty for what we need. We don't need to worry about additional storage. If this is going to be a production server, we would highly recommend that you look at enabling automatic backups. As a just in case, you never know what might happen. It doesn't cost that much, so a production server should always have some form of backup in place anyway. So next we're going to set a password for our root account. Now, we are going to disable this account later on, but we will still need it initially to do the setup. So let's set a password for this. There we go. So set your password. Remember this password. Make sure it's a half-decent strong one. We don't need to worry about metrics, and we don't need to worry about a managed database. So the final bits that need to be done, we need to give our server a host name. So it comes with one pre-filled. It doesn't mean anything. This will be the host name that you will use later on to access the web interface for Bondix, and also will be used for applying the SSL certificate later on as well. So in our particular case, we're just going to call this Bondix test, simply wifi.cloud. You can add tags if you want to. It's entirely up to you. Sometimes if you've got a lot of servers in your dashboard, in order to filter them or search for them, having a tag there could be beneficial. But we find that the hostname is sufficient. So once you've got that done, we'll go off and create the droplet. At this point, DigitalOcean will go off and create the droplet for us. It takes about 20 to 30 seconds. Once it's completed and we can see that we've got an IP address, what you'll need to do at that point is stop and go no further. So Once you've got your IP address, you will need to create a DNS A record. So this A record will be named the same as what you named the host name. So for us, we've got simplywifi.cloud as our domain name. So we'll go off to our DNS provider. We'll add an A record, which is Bondix-test. And as you can see here, we now have a public IP address. So we will add that IP address into the IP field of the DNS A record and save that. Now, if it's a new domain that you're setting up, it can take up to 72 hours for that to propagate through. If it's an existing domain, then it shouldn't take more than an hour. But once you've got that set up, we can then move forward. So you can see here now that it's completed its setup. That server is now online and has Ubuntu running on it. If we click into the server itself, we can get lots of information on it. You can have a look at that and navigate around yourself. It's all standard, and you can see drives and CPU usage and stuff like that. You can have a look at that. The main one that we're looking at is over here. We've got a console. Now, because we've got an IP address, a public IP address here, IPv4 address, we can open up something like PuTTY. We can put the IP address in, connect on port 22, click on the open button, and then you'll be prompted with a black command screen where it will be asking you to log in with the root user and the password that you set when you was setting up the server. DigitalOcean are kind enough to provide us with a console that we can log into ourselves. So that will log us in. And the benefit is that it'll actually automatically provide the username and password that you set earlier on for you. So you don't have to worry about adding things in and logging in and stuff like that. So what we're first going to do is we're going to make sure that the server is completely updated and is fully patched. So to do that, we want to type sudo at update and sudo at upgrade -y. So what we're telling it to do is to update all of its update sources first to make sure they're all up to date, and then upgrade the operating system with any patches or security updates or anything like that it needs. So in this particular case, as you can see here, there is 17 updates that need to be applied and 13 security updates. So when we do that, that'll go off. It'll update all its various items and then do the actual software upgrades as well. This can take a little while to complete if it's a server that's a little bit further out of date. What we'll do is we'll pause here and then we'll come back once it's complete. So once the server's updated, we recommend give the server a reboot and then log back in again. You can see that all the updates have been applied and there's nothing left to be applied on there. So two things that we're going to do now. We're going to add a Bondix admin user, and then what we're going to do is change the port on which you access the console. So first off, we're going to add the new Bondix user. So we're going to go sudo add user Bondix admin. So what this will do is this will add the new user and it will prompt me to add a password for it as well. So there we go. So the new password, and then we'll confirm that password. And then you've got the option of adding some additional information like full name, department, and everything else. You can just enter through these if you don't want to add these in. And the information is correct, so we say yes, and that's it. That's that user added. So what we've got to do now is we've got to allow that user to run sudo commands as if it was the root user. This means that you're using a standard user who's given the privileges to be able to elevate itself to an admin user when it needs to run some specific commands. So we will do sudo user mod -ag sudo Bondix admin. So this will modify the user and add it to these groups, or add it to the group sudo, and allow the Bondix admin to use that group and its privileges. So we'll enter that. So that's that done. So the next thing that we're going to do is modify the port. So standard SSH works on port 22. It is a port that is on a lot of servers is kind of attacked regularly every minute when it's available online, when something finds that port's there. Now, changing the port is not necessarily going to stop the attacks from happening, or the attempted attack, should I say, but it will obscure it a bit and it will lessen the impact on the server. So it's always worth changing the port if you can. So in this particular case, we're going to go sudo nano minus w, and then we're going to go etc/ssh/ssh_config. So this is the SSH config file. What you're looking for is the entry that says port 22. So that's going to be a little bit further down. So if we go down towards that, which is there, you want to uncomment that, and you want to change it to whatever port you want to change it to. So we basically normally go 2222. There you go. And then all you need to do at this point is go Control X, Y, and enter, and that will save the file. What we then need to do is we need to reload SSH. So if we do sudo systemctl reload sshd, so this will tell the system control to reload the SSH daemon and basically restart the SSH service. What we will do is we will give once we've made that change, we'll give the server a quick restart. And then we'll wait for that to reload. So from here, we're going to set up the firewall. So there are certain ports that we have to have open. So port 80 and port 443, that allows for port 80 is used by Let's Encrypt for the SSL certificate. Port 443 is used for accessing the secure web interface for Bondix. Bondix itself talks on port UDP 44343 to the Bondix client on the router. That's over UDP, so we'll need to add that. And we'll also need to add a firewall rule for port 2222 to allow that in as well. So we'll go and set that now. So first off, if we do sudo ufw, which is the Ubuntu firewall, and we do status, you'll see that it's inactive at this point. So if we do sudo ufw allow, and then we do HTTP, it's a shorthand way of telling it to allow port 80 to be open over TCP. So that will open up that port automatically, and it's added those two rules there for both IPv4 and IPv6. So we'll do the same again, but we'll do HTTPS. So that's absolutely fine. So the next rule is slightly different. So sudo ufw allow. So now what we want to do is 44343. So that is the port that Bondix uses when it's bonding to communicate to the bonding client that's on the router. But this is over UDP. So we do /UDP. So that tells the firewall that if anything comes in on TCP on that port, to not allow it in. So that's that one. And then what we need to do is we need to do sudo ufw allow, and then it's 2222, and then we do TCP. So that's our SSH port change that we did. So if we do that, now we do sudo ufw enable. So what that's going to do is going to turn the firewall on at this point. Now, we could possibly lose connection at this point, but this is going to turn the firewall, and it will give you a warning to say that potentially you could lose connectivity. So it says a command may disrupt existing SSH connections. You want to proceed, so we say yes, and the firewall is enabled. So we can go sudo ufw status at this point again. Now what it will do is it will show that the firewall is enabled, but it will also show the rules that we put in earlier on. So there they are there. So you can see port 80, port 443, UDP port that we put in, and our 2222 TCP port as well is in there. So what we're going to do now is we are going to set the time zone. Now, depending on how the server images have been created by DigitalOcean or Vultr or whoever it is that you're using for your hosted platform, the time zones might not be correct. So therefore, when you are looking at logs, when you're looking at real-time data or anything like that, the times may be off, and it may not relate correctly to what you're looking at. So all we want to do is do sudo dpkg -t reconfigure, and we do tz data. So what we'll get here is we'll get this box. So we're able to then set where we are in the world and set our time zone. So in our particular case, we're going to go to Europe, and then we're going to go down and select London. There we go. And that's it. So now that's set the time, and there's no problem with that. As you go through doing updates and you are putting security updates on and updating packages and stuff like that, older versions of those packages will remain on the server and can start clogging up the server space over time, which can impact on the performance of the server. What you can do is you can set up a thing called autoremove. So sudo apt autoremove-y. So what that will do is that will go through and look at anything that needs to be removed automatically, because it's now no longer required, and just tidy everything up for you. So if we do that, it will go through. On this occasion, because it's a brand new server installation, there was nothing to do. Now that won't do anything now, that will never run again. So what we want to do is we want to set up a schedule where this is run every so often, normally once a month or something like that. So it just cleans stuff up for us automatically. So in this particular case, we've got quite a lot to write there, so I've just copied that one in. So we're going to add the sudo apt remove -y command into the monthly cron schedule under auto remove. So that will create a file called auto remove in the monthly schedule with that command in there, and it will do everything else for us. So let's do that. That's done. So that's all good. We need to now allow that file to be executed. So we need to change its permissions just so it'll execute. There we go. So we do that. That's now done. So we are now at the stage where we can install Bondix itself. It's quite straightforward, but there are a couple of things that if you don't do it correctly will kind of get you a little bit. So in our particular case, we're going to go and grab the installation script from the Bondix website. So what that will do is that will download the file. So that's complete. We now need to give that file execute permissions so that we can run it. So that's there. And what we now want to do is to actually run the installation script itself so that we can install the server, which is there. So what will happen now is it'll ask you for the installation directory. The default is absolutely fine. Just hit that and let it go. That's now going to go and do the installation. The installation is now complete. It's very quick. It's very easy. There are two things that you need to be aware of at this point. Firstly, you have a username and a password here. These are your login details for the web admin area. And secondly, you have a config access, an advanced config access, which also has the same password. If you do lose your password and you need to reset it, that can be done by editing this file using a program like Nano or something like that. So what we're going to do is we are going to copy that. No, we're not going to go here. We're going to right click and we're going to copy. So what we're going to do at this point is we're going to go to our server. So upon heading over to our server, when we put HTTPS in, it comes up with the connection's not private because we haven't set the SSL certificate yet. So it's using a self-signed. So on this particular occasion, it's okay to click on advanced and proceed. What that will do is that will log in. That will give us the Bondix login screen. So if we do admin as the username and copy in the password that we just copied from the server, we now have a working Bondix setup. So this just needs to be licensed and it needs to have its first tunnel set up. We'll cover both of those in another video. What we're going to do now is we're going to go back and we're going to set up the Let's Encrypt portion so we have a proper SSL certificate on the website. If we head back and we go back to command window, what we're going to do at this point is we're going to install something called certbot. This is what's going to handle all of our SSL certificates as well as renew them every 3 months as well. So if we do sudo apt install certbot, so we say yes to allow it to install anything else that it needs for it to run correctly. So that's going to go off and do that. Once that's done, we're going to tell certbot to run a certificate only setup. And we do that by essentially going to sudo certbot cert only. Okay, they're going to have a number of questions come up at this point because it needs to know exactly how you're going to do things. So the first question that we have here is, do we want to spin up a temporary web server, a standalone, or do we want to place the files in a directory? We want to do option 1. So we select option 1 and hit enter. So next it's going to ask you for an email address. So this email address is going to be where it notifies you when your certificate is expiring or if it's failed to renew for whatever reason, so that you are not left obviously with a server that's not secure. So we will put our email address in there and then we'll hit enter. So what happens at this point is going to ask you to read the terms of service. We just say yes to that. It's going to ask if you want to share your email address with the Electronic Frontier Foundation. This is entirely up to you. We've done it on our first installation and we just say no to all the others. So we say no on this one. This is now going to ask you for the domain name, the host name that you set up right at the beginning. This is going to essentially create the SSL certificate based on that host name. If you didn't set up your A record or your A record hasn't fully propagated through, this step is going to fail. So you need to make sure that this has all been done first before you get down to this point. So our host name is bondix-test.simplywifi.cloud. So this is what we set right at the beginning. Let's type it in this time. Test.simplywifi.cloud. So this is what we set up right at the beginning when we created the server. We added our DNS A record. We pointed it back to the IP address when we got it sorted. So this now will create an SSL certificate. It has to talk, the Let's Encrypt servers have to talk back to our server in order to verify that the server is correct and to install the SSL certificate. That's why we open port 80, so that process can happen and we can get a seamless certificate created. So if we hit enter on that one right now, it will go through and it will start doing the the tests and the installation. So that's completed successfully. So we now have a successfully received certificate, and it's sat in these two particular locations. Note that it creates a folder with your domain name there, and your certificates actually sit inside that. That's something to remember, because we're going to need that later on. So now what we need to do is we need to tell Bondix. We're going to open the Bondix configuration file. So sudo nano, and we do /etc/sane server.json. So that's going to open up the configuration file. So as you can see here, this is where you can change your passwords for your admin logins. But on top of that, what we're going to do is we're going to add some additional lines into here to tell it to use the new certificates we've just generated. So at the end of the last line, we want to put a comma in, and then we want to hit return. Again, in the blog article, we've got all the bits and pieces in there, but if we paste into here, so this is what we've added. We've basically turned around and said that we want to add HTTPS on port 443, and we want to use the following certificates. So where it says your domain.name, this is where you need to change to the domain the host name that you've set up. So in our particular case, it will be bondix-test.simplywifi.cloud. And then we need to do another one, which is just over here. We have to add this twice. So let's delete that one out. And we do bondix-test.simplywifi.cloud. This will be obviously your host name that you've set up. And then at the end, we want to remove that particular comma there. And then we do Control X, and we hit Y, and we hit Enter to save that configuration file. Now, to make sure that there's no typos or anything like that, we want to restart the Bondix server. So sudo systemctl restart Bondix, or you could just restart and reboot the server. That would be absolutely fine. So that's now restarted it. So that's it. We've got a fully patched, fully installed Bondix server with SSL certificate, and it's ready to go. So all you've got to do is license it and put on your first tunnel. We'll cover those in the next set of videos, but right for now, you've got a fully live Bondix server ready to start accepting bonding tunnels.